So, what does it take to charge an electric car on a small home solar system? Now, some folks might say, well, so what's the big deal? It's the same as any other appliance, right? You just plug it in and charge the car. Well, that is true, but only if your solar system is large enough to handle charging the car. But if you're dealing with a smaller solar system like the one I have, it takes a lot longer to charge the car. Now that schedule might work for some people, but if you need it charged up quickly, you might have to make a bigger solar system to charge it faster. Another important difference about charging that I didn't understand is that charging an electric car at home,
as compared to using most household appliances or shop tools,
is that charging will typically take hours to complete, which can put a strain on the home's electrical system, especially when charging at any of the higher, faster rates. So I would pay particular attention to any electrical cords, plugs, receptacles, extension cords. If they cannot handle the continuous duty at higher charge rates, they can get warm or dangerously hot and cause a fire. All that has to be checked out by a licensed, qualified electrician before I would go into the higher charging realms. Ask your electrician.
even my car's owner's manual warns about this very issue and recommends an inspection by a licensed electrician before charging at home on these higher, faster rates of charge.
I've put this little video together to pass on some of the information I found about what it took to get my electric car charged up on my small home solar system. And could the charging be fast enough to get the car completely full in less than a day? Well, that depends. Where I live on the Earth, a winter solar day is much shorter than a summer solar day. And the difference gets more severe the further away you live from the equator. And the closer you live to the equator, it gets less and less of a difference between summer and winter days. So you want to plan your solar system to be big enough to charge your car fast enough on the shortest day of the year. Ideally, another thing to consider is that some systems like mine are totally off-grid, so I have my own battery storage to take me through the night and on cloudy days. Charging up those batteries each morning takes priority, and usually they finally get filled around 10 in the morning, 11 in the morning, and so then I can charge the electric car.
Well, it's about time we go meet the focus of all this attention.
Can you guess which car it is?
It could be a 50-mile range plug-in hybrid, or it could be a 250-mile full electric. Either way, the principles are the same.
Learning what it takes to charge an electric car on a small solar system.
Of course, a 250-mile range battery is going to take a lot longer to charge than a 50-mile range battery, given everything else stays the same.
Actually, it's a plug-in hybrid. It has 50 miles of electric range before the gasoline engine takes over and takes you another 300 miles. Almost all my commuting is less than 50 miles. So the gasoline engine never starts on these commutes. But the part that really tickles me is that when I get home, I charge the car up on my own solar electric system.
Feels pretty good. All the cars are going to come with this basic low power cord to charge the car if you've got nothing else faster. And it plugs into a standard outlet in the US 120 volt, and most of these circuits are 15 amp max.
So using the slow charger that comes with the car, this chart shows the charging levels that would be most common from charging at home, and the car's default charge level, which is this lowest one here, the 8 amp, 960 watts. Add 10% on for the losses in the equipment, so that totals up to 1050 watts. That's how much power in watts it would take to charge up the car at this lowest rate. Well, let's see what kind of power we're making here coming in from the solar. Our solar panels power coming in is 114 volts. I have a 48 volt battery system, so that's the 54, which is a float voltage. And here's the kilowatts. It's a little over 1 kilowatt, 1050 watts. And it's 19 hours to charge the car at that rate. Now for me, this is way too slow, way too long. That would take 2 or 3 solar afternoons to charge the car. But my solar panels only are putting out around this much. So that doesn't let me have any extra for my refrigerator or lights, radio, etc. And even worse, that doesn't take into account some extra you should have in case there's a hazy day or the solar panels are dirty. So I'm on the edge of not having enough solar power to charge my car even at the lowest, slowest rate.
Humiliating. Well, it's not as bad as it sounds because I'm planning on expanding my solar system so that I can charge it at higher, faster rates.
Now this car defaults back to this 8 amp reduced rate every time. So if you want to charge it up at the higher 12 amp rate, you have to go in here in the car's computer on the screen on the center of the dash and click that you want the 12 amp higher rate. Now it's only 13 hours to a full charge instead of 19. And you see the 1,780 watts. About 200 watts of that is to power other things in my household besides charging the car. So looking at the chart again, you can see under level 1 that we were on the higher 12 amp this time, and it took 1,600 watts. Okay, so now we're going to move on up to level 2 charging, and that's going to let the car get full faster, but you got to come up with the power to do it. So you can see the first lowest one here is 12 amps at 240 volts AC. That's 3,200 watts. And a full charge would take maybe 6.5 hours. Then there's a 15 amp, 4,000 watts.
And this is the limit for this 2018 Volt.
But even at this 15 amp limit, it is much faster. This will only take 4 hours to 5 hours to charge the car.
1 solar afternoon or less.
That's the goal anyway. So in review, this column on the right that I've boxed in is the solar power that has to be produced if I want to charge the car at that rate. And it'd be smart to make my solar panels be rated for a third larger wattage than what is listed here, because solar panels rarely put out the full wattage. It's usually about a third less.
And all solar panels degrade, lose power over time. So you want to leave yourself some margin.
And of course, don't forget to add on the amount you need to run your household. Okay, well now my challenge is if I want to go up to the level 2 faster charging rates, I've got to change my solar system. I'm going to need a lot more solar panels, and I'm going to have to go from a 120 volt inverter to an inverter that can produce 240 volts AC as well as 120 volt. For those of us who don't know what an inverter does, it simply turns the solar power DC into regular household power AC.
Just so we know, now back to the show.
An important thing about inverters is to know their size. If it's a 3,500 watt inverter and you're going to try and get 4,000 watts out of it, it's going to be shutting down all the time because it's overheating, overworking. And this is especially so in temperatures that are hotter. And if my system was 12 volts or 24 volts DC batteries system, if I could afford it and I was expanding for the electric car, I would invest in changing the battery setup to be 48 volt. Cuts the amperage down, which is a great benefit in many ways. Ask your electrician.
So now that's all good and well, but what if I don't need to charge my car up fast?
Well, then a smaller system might be okay with you. But I want to charge at the faster level 2 rate. So I had to change my system around. I got an inverter that ran on a 48 volt DC system, put out 240 volts at 4,400 watts. Now, if I thought I might ever want to expand my system in the future, I would get an inverter brand and model that can be teamed up together with another one just like it and double the amount of power that can be produced.
2 of these together could handle over 8,000 watts, and that could put you up into this even higher category here if your solar power could produce that much. And some other inverter brands and models can be teamed up together side by side to double the voltage as well as the wattage. So that would get you into the 240 volt level 2 realm. And you could keep the inverter you already have. Just double it.
Always follow the inverter manufacturer's instructions for teaming up these inverters together.
I haven't tried that yet. 4,000 is plenty enough for what I'm doing right now.
So let me introduce you to a level 2 charger. They range in price from several $100s on up. This one was $500, I believe. And it mounts in your garage, your carport. Then when you're done, you hang the little plug in its little slot there to store it. Now this unit is rated for 7,200 watts, but my Chevy Volt limits it to only half that much. Ultimately, it's the car that determines the high charge limit.
Well, I don't want to get too technical here about building these solar racks, but I've been dreaming about a rack that would be simple to build and strong. I do have raw footage for another video that shows how the racks were made. So if you want to see that, just click on the little white strip up at the top of the video. If it's not there yet, that means I haven't finished it. But back at the ranch, while the car is trying to charge on the level 2 3600 watt rate for the first time, let's check in and see how much solar is coming in now, with most of the new panels installed.
And looks like we've got 3,300 watts. This would have to be up to around 4,000 to really be the best performance max. But we're getting there.
It's way more than I've ever seen come through my system.
But I'll have to stop this charging because it's not enough solar. They're eating into my house batteries. Nighttime battery stash.
Can't have that.
And check this out. There's another major issue here. See this amperage coming in, the 61.5 amps? That's starting to get close to the limit of the charge controller, and it gets worse on hotter days.
So here's a common remedy.
I'm going to divide the solar power coming in into 2 groups, each carrying only half the power.
And then add another charge controller in, so each charge controller's going to only have to do half the work. They'll run much cooler, so they won't have to throttle back during hot days. Well now, it's finally the moment. Let's hook up this level 2 charger and see if our solar system will match the power demand of a level 2 charge. And for the first time, We have all the new big solar panels connected, and their total output has been tested to well over 4,000 watts.
And we get to see the charge coming in from the solar through the two charge controllers now. Each of them doing only half the work. Let's see, 1,830 watts. The solar amperage is 33.1, which is fine. That's cruising.
Let's check out the other one. And look here, it's similar specs. 1,780 watts. And it comes out to around 3,500 watts, and 150 of that is being used by my house for other things, so we're not at the maximum rate. But it's a nice place that's pretty close to it. It's not overwhelming my system. It's leaving me with a little bit of reserve, which I like. So it's going to take maybe 6 hours to charge the car. That would still be fast enough to charge in one solar afternoon, unless it was a real short winter solar day. Then it might take 2 afternoons. But many times when I get home, the battery isn't dead all the way anyway. I have 5 to 10 miles left on it. So even with a short afternoon, I can still get the car charged back up full. We're looking at a view of my car's main instrument cluster. But you come down, this is like the fuel tank for the electric battery. So it's less than half a tank, you could call it. And see down here it says there's only 23 miles of EV range remaining. And the charging is going to be complete in about 3 hours from now. So now here we are 3 hours later, and that's where the battery was less than half full. Now it's all the way full, and it's saying that we've got 54 miles of electric range, which is a full battery in this car. Fully charged.